Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. You were out and about, right? You were in Colorado, right?
Yeah, I was in Colorado. We got back Saturday. We stayed one day longer than we had planned, just because Morrissey canceled his Chicago show, or sorry, his Milwaukee show on Saturday. So we got word of that, and we're like, well, it's the only reason we're really going back and not staying the weekend. So we extended till Saturday afternoon, and then we went out for a big dinner and some drinks with my cousin and her husband, who is my best friend, to celebrate the non-Morrissey concert, because we were all going to go together, because she's a big fan. I'm a big fan. We're all big fans, actually.
He's done that a lot recently, right? Didn't he walk out of a concert too?
Yeah, he's a bad boy, bad Brit. Well, what's crazy is we went to Boulder, Colorado, where Sarah's from, to see her family for Thanksgiving on Monday. And while I was there Monday evening, Tuesday, or whenever it was, I was just like, oh, I wonder what shows are in town, just out of curiosity. And Morrissey was playing in Denver on Wednesday night. And I'm like, uh-oh, I think we should get tickets. So I bought tickets. And they were not cheap, but I'm like, we're just going to splurge, and we're going to get third row in the secondary market, of course. But I'm like, let's just do it. So we bought tickets, and then later that day, he canceled.
He canceled in Denver as well?
He canceled 4 shows, and then he canceled 6, at least, maybe more. But he canceled Salt Lake and Denver, and then he canceled Milwaukee and somewhere else. I think Minnesota, maybe. And then he was bound for DC next, and it was funny, his socials, he kept posting, oh, really sorry, someone in the band is ill. It's a bad Morrissey accent impersonation, but he's like, but we'll be happy to see you in Milwaukee. And then it was like next day, hey, sorry, we got to cancel Milwaukee, we'll see you in DC. And then they canceled DC, and I'm just like, okay, LOL.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has a habit of doing that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I saw some uproar about him walking out mid-concert, maybe Los Angeles. It was somewhere, right? It was somewhere, must have been somewhere with a Hispanic audience, because I was was a friend of mine who happened to be there, and he was shocked.
Well, he has a ginormous Mexican following in particular. And there's actually a band called Mexercy, who I have seen, who are fantastic.
Really?
They incorporate, I would say, Mexican music, if I can say that. I saw them in Brooklyn back in the day, but yeah, he played a ton of dates in California. And the bittersweet thing is, the reviews are amazing. People are like, he looks great, because he's had like throat cancer and stuff, and so they're like, he looks great, and the pictures look great, and the shows were great. But then, yeah, he left after a half hour in LA, and that went viral. People are like, I can't imagine being the first time Morrissey concert goer, because like, I don't know, I've seen him a lot, and I'm kind of used to him sometimes canceling. And I can't imagine being a first timer. You're probably like, wait, what the fuck just happened? That guy just left.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm having a good week.
Sweet.
Yeah. We, this, obviously the shop is slow right now, but picking up and starting on, kind of winter projects that we've been talking about, cleaning up and rehabbing the shop, and had a little bit of help in the shop this week. Had somebody stop by, and I'm, I've been talking about this plan to lure people back into the bike shop, and I at least I've lured one guy back to give me a hand, and it was his first day back at the shop. I don't want to overwhelm him. He's been out of the bike business for a little bit,
okay,
and so I'm just kind of I just
are you naming names, or are these people going to remain anonymous?
Not yet. I'm not going to count my chickens yet, Danny. I'm not going to count my chickens yet. But it was just the hint of having some real qualified, bona fide help at the bike shop is like, it's kind of exciting. So yeah, because as you know, I think I've been rebuilding the team. I feel like I'm kind of like the Chicago Bears right now. I took it all the way down to the studs. I've got a couple of young kids working at the shop who I hope pan out, but the rest of it is really, bare bones.
The proverbial rebuilding phase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully
my life story, constant rebuilding.
Yeah. Trying to get an all-star team together. And
that's really cool, actually.
Yeah.
So
one last good run in this business, just kind of go out on top.
It sounds epic, man. It sounds like Top Gun Maverick,
Danny, you're here too.
I know.
I mean,
telling you, man, we got to make every day count.
We got to, man. We got to. That's why we're here talking into these microphones too. So yeah, I mean, it's it's good. It's fun. I think I've mentioned that I'm working on a custom bike for a. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast or not, but I've got a custom bike.
You alluded to it, but you didn't say the name, and I think I know who it is, but I won't reveal. Unless you want to conceal some more.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a basketball player, an NBA player. I'm building him a custom bike. I'm having a custom. I've been involved with getting a custom bike built for him. So I am.
Is he current or former pro?
Former pro.
Okay.
NBA champion.
Whoa.
Raised a cup, or no, they don't have a cup. What do they raise?
Trophy,
they raise a trophy.
They just raise their rings.
That's right. They
diamonds.
Get rings. They cut down nets, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah. So that's a cool project. That's 2 years in the making, Danny.
Sweet.
Yeah, it turns out making an extra big bike like that.
Look at you, hombre.
Custom is pretty involved, but
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we hit kind of a major mark this week in that we got a down payment. So that's yeah.
Great, man.
Yeah. So we're going into the final building stage. It's been testing until now. It's prototyping and testing, and it should be fun.
Sounds super high tech. Well, I'm super stoked. Do you have a current delivery date?
We're looking at March.
Okay.
Which I believe you and I may have tossed some dates around to be, perhaps go overseas at that time. So that might be, a reason to go, even more reason to go.
I'm game, baby. Let's do it.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I'm game.
Oh, then
unless there's something that bars me from doing that I can't control, I am. I'm all for it.
Well, we got to talk to the other guy. See if the other guy is still
Mr.
interested.
AJ.
Yeah.
He's not with us today, but he was on the last pod, right? So that was fun. Well, that's really cool. So we have a special treat, Joe, as you know, for our listeners today.
Yeah.
We have a guest who I'm about to ping and get on. And I know you know who he is at this point because I sent you the info.
Yeah, it's your massage therapist, Doug, right?
Very close.
He knows you intimately.
Yeah, maybe that's the other podcast we have. No, but on a sad note, Joe, I do want to take a minute, just in case we don't get to it with our special guest. Rest in peace, David Rebelline.
Yeah, bummer.
Who was killed by apparently by a truck driver in a truck bike collision. I believe it was today in Italy. He was on a training ride, although he is officially recently retired. I think he retired at the age of 51. He was born, I think, the same year I was. So he'd be 50, 51, I think 51. And he was known, I think, primarily for, a couple things. But he raced forever. He literally just retired recently. So most guys, retire in their like late 20s, 30s, like a few go into their 40s. He was racing at a pretty high level into his 50s. So he was well known for that. He did win a bunch of crazy big races back in the day, a lot of classics, including Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He won the Ardennes Triple, the Amstel Gold, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and what's the third? I'm forgetting. Flèche Wallonne, the one on Wednesday, sandwich in between there. So I believe he won that. He also is known for having been suspended for PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. But in the 90s, he was kind of the shit, and he won crazy number of races, and he had that magical week. Let's just leave it as magical. It might have been more than just magical. Where he won the triple, which is kind of a hallowed thing in cycling, right? It's like winning Flanders and Roubaix or something back to back. But so he was killed in a bike car crash, and I think I haven't heard an official word what happened, but apparently the driver took off, but there was some suggestion that the driver was unaware what happened. You never know in these situations, and I'm always very wary of people, victim blaming and saying a truck hit him when, come on, trucks don't kill people, drivers kill people. I'm very picky about that as a journalist. But anyway, the main story is he was killed, and just a horrific, tragic thing. And he's everybody knows him, right? Like people our age, especially. Like I've seen it all over my socials, and all his former teammates expressing condolences and things like that. But he was the shit, man.
He had some battles
in the
with
90s.
Some big battles with Armstrong.
I think Armstrong and Bogard, Mikhail Bogard, and bunch of because those were all the heavy hitters, right? In the 90s. I believe, and he won. You could see his resume. He won almost everything. I mean, he won a ton of races. So I just always thought he was very passionate, and we all know about his doping suspension. So that's just the hard reality of it. But if we can look beyond that too, I think you just have to say the guy was so passionate. And someone, I'm going to butcher it, but someone had a nice kind of sentiment today. They were just like he clearly was. I think it was Matt Stevens from ITV or GCN Racing, but the sentiment was like, no matter what, he lived on his bike, and he was a man for two wheels, and he was nothing but passionate for the bicycle. I think that is undeniable. So
I saw that.
Real sad to see that. Real shocking. I woke up to that. It was like the first thing I saw. Where I saw it on my LinkedIn. Ooh. Someone like posted it and then commented, and I was like, "What's this about Rebelline?" And I started reading it, and I was like, "Don't even tell me." So then I had to go to like another site to confirm it, but. Yeah, so sad.
It was a bummer to wake up to. I saw a photo of what was left of the bike, and it was pretty rough. It looks like he was riding a gravel bike. From the photos.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, you're right. I saw that too. It's just all you see is a pile of bicycle. It's like cracked frame and fork, and it's his wheels and everything mangled, and it's like in this little tidy pile. It's kind of very eerie and weird. And it was shared, which I don't know. I have two thoughts about that. As a journalist, a lot of times it's not encouraged to kind of share certain things. But anyway, ultimately very sad on a human level, on a personal level, obviously. And it just goes to show you, I think people don't realize how dangerous cycling is, and how we don't know this story, but how just cycling out in the wild and on open roads is so dangerous. Of course, we don't know the details, so we won't speculate, but just horrific news to wake up to. I just wanted to give a little shout out and a rest in peace to Davide Rebellin.
I'm with you, man.
We should go ahead, Joe, if you're cool, if there's nothing else, and get our
let's get to it, man.
Guy on.
Let's get to it.
Let's do it, because time goes fast on this show.
That's right.
So let me just grab this link. All right, let me just do this. Bear with me, folks.
It's fine. Take your time. I can clean this up.
Nice. Yeah, here we go.
Okay. You say so.
It's Dan.
Whoa.
Hello.
Dan Cavallari.
Hey.
How are you, man?
Cavallari.
It depends on if you want to be like proper, correct, or American.
What should we say? What do you say? Come on, you're leaving me hanging.
Oh, I say Cavallari because I'm a lazy
Cavallari. Okay, Dan Cavallari. Great to have you on the show. This is Joe, my co-host, my co-banter.
How are you,
Hi, Joe.
Dan? Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Good, man.
And thanks for coming on the show, man. This is so cool. Now this feels like a real podcast. And we've been really being the old amateurs up until this point. I feel like because you do a podcast and you're a cycling media dude, we've just raised the bar here. We've become more legit in like 2 seconds.
Danny, a podcast? A podcast? He does more than one podcast.
He's got a lot.
He's got a lot going on.
So just quick backstory. Like I know Dan from, I think the first time we ever met, and this is going to sound uber pretentious, but the first time we met was at the Tour de France. Because I knew you from cycling media, and I saw your byline, and I kept seeing your face all over. I'm like, who is this guy? And and then we followed each other on the socials and all that. And then finally we actually met, I think, on a gravel bus parking lot and like at the Tour. And I'm like, Dan, and you're like, Dan. But great to see you again. It's been a while, man. How have you been?
It has. Good. Busy. I think we met in a cobbled. It was actually cobbled parking lot to sound even more pretentious.
Oh, the potential meter is like bing, bing, bing,
yeah.
bing.
Yeah. Doing well. Just really busy. Trying to launch all these titles and being a freelance writer at the same time is, keeps me going. So.
Awesome. It is so cool to have you. No, that's great. So cool to have you. And you're in or around Boulder. Can we give away your general geolocation?
Sure. So I'm actually outside of the Boulder bubble. I'm in Arvada, which is a little bit closer to Denver.
Okay. I was actually in the area last week. My girlfriend is from Superior.
Oh, right on. That's right up the road.
Yes. So we were hanging out there, and it was one of those busy, crazy weeks where I wanted to do a million things and reach out to people. And next thing I know, we're on the flight back home. I'm like, exactly. How did that happen? But yeah, this is Joe Gaspar, and Joe and I have been friends forever. But Joe can tell you more about himself.
Yeah. I just, Danny and I met the old-fashioned way. I was riding by, and he yelled at another man to stop. And exchange phone numbers. And exchange phone numbers
on a pink DeRosa. What could be better?
Yeah. Chase another man down the street and ask him for his phone number and see if he'd like to get together.
Way, huh?
It really was. Yeah, it was the old-fashioned way
in Chicago.
Yeah. And I've been working at bike shops for since I was a teenager, and own a bicycle shop now. And I know you were a bicycle mechanic back in Maine and Arizona, right? A couple places.
All over the place.
Joe did his research. Good job, Joe.
No, he knows more about me than I do.
I know a little bit about you, man. Was that back when you were in college in Maine? Is that it?
Yeah, I went to college in Maine. I was working at a shop there, and then I moved out to Arizona after college and worked at some shops there as well. And then actually worked at shops here in Colorado too.
Wow.
Whereabouts?
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just curious. Whereabouts in Maine was that?
I went to school at the University of Maine in Orono, so I worked at a shop in Orono.
Where is Orono? I'm just drawing a blank.
So if you watch movies, there's a city in Maine called, according to movies, Bangor, but it's actually pronounced Bangor, which is
right.
The right.
Isn't that where Stephen King lives?
Yeah, it is. Yes,
okay.
It is. Yeah, I saw him many times in my tenure there. Yeah.
Was it scary? Sorry.
Sorry. He bites.
Hashtag sorry.
No, yeah, he actually guest taught one of my classes once. It was really cool.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, you were present for that class?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a very, very cool experience. And actually, funny story. So he sat right in front of us the first time I saw The Lord of the Rings in the theater. He was sitting right in front of us.
Whoa.
Yeah, brush with fame.
That is very cool. I'm a starstruck person. I try not to be, but
yeah,
I'm kind of a starstruck person. I can't deny it.
He's one of my writing heroes for sure.
Did you read the book he did? I forget what it's called, but it's like on writing or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Oh my God, that is so good. Because I will admit, I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan in terms of like his writing. I follow him on Twitter because he has lots of great tweets.
Yeah.
But I did read that book. And of course, I've read a couple others and I've seen tons of the movies. But that book on writing is so good. I would recommend it to anyone. Oh, you did?
Yeah. When I was a high school teacher, I used to teach that to my students. They loved it.
Wait a minute. You were a high school teacher?
Mm-hmm. I was. Yeah.
So was I.
No kidding. What'd you teach?
I taught English, ESL, English and ESL, basically.
Okay. So I taught English and literature, and my wife actually teaches ESL.
Oh, wow.
That is so funny. I never knew that about you.
Yeah. I can see the staring into the middle distance, shock of it all is still in your eyes. Yeah.
No, it makes total sense. It makes
Yeah.
total sense.
Surrounded by all these teachers.
I know. You can't escape us.
No,
right?
will
no,
be
you
a
guys are all
quiz.
over the place.
There'll be a
You
quiz
guys
later,
have
Joe.
very much in common.
We do.
So, could we do one of those quick things? So, just to backtrack. So, you went to school. I'm sorry. What's the town called?
Orono.
Orono. So, you went to school in Orono. You did your undergrad there?
Yep.
Okay. And then, so where were you born and raised?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah. Not like the nice part either. Like in
the rough and tumble parts.
Yeah, the central Connecticut where all those dead mill towns are.
Right.
That's where I grew up.
Like Bruce Springsteen type towns.
Pretty much, yeah. It's Jersey light, I guess.
Jersey light with a few more foliage rides.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with New England foliage.
But he had sleeves. He had sleeves on his shirts.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're classy. We're upper class, middle class.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough to get up around those parts a little bit. It's gorgeous. Okay, so born and raised there, then went to school in Maine. Tell me if I'm skipping something. And then you moved out to, you said Arizona?
I did. Yeah, I moved to Flagstaff, Arizona. Lived there for a few years. And met a lovely girl who I fell in love with, and then she dragged me to Mexico City, and she stayed there for 2 years. I stayed for about 6 weeks. Could not. I'm a guy who needs to be in the woods, and there's not much of that in Mexico City. Yeah. So, but yeah, did that and went back to Flagstaff for a bit, and that's where I was a teacher. And then we moved to Colorado. So the journey has so far ended here.
Did you move to Arvada straight away, or did you just end up there?
No. We went to. I basically followed my wife around like a lost puppy. So she would get jobs like a grown up, and I would go ride my bike in places. So we moved to Colorado Springs, and then after Colorado Springs, up to Denver, and then out to Arvada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man. We just did the cruise, the timeline of Dan Cavallari.
I know. Yeah. It was brief.
and you seem very happy in Colorado, so that's true to life, not just a social media gloss.
Oh no, I mean it's great here. I think it's unparalleled beauty. It's definitely gotten a lot more crowded in recent years, which is a bummer. But generally speaking, it's a great place to land.
Yeah, and
so I can't complain too much. I find ways to complain, but I can't too much.
And not to go dark, but just briefly, were you at all affected by the fires last Christmas time? Because I was flying back the day of the fires. We'd been there for a week. And I just mentioned that because my girlfriend's parents, they were evacuated from their neighborhood, and all the craziness that went down. But there are a lot of houses lost right by them and all that stuff. I'm just wondering if any of that affected any of your area.
We were lucky. We were right on the southern edge of the evacuation area, and so we didn't have to evacuate, but we had bags packed just in case. But that was a truly terrifying time for sure, and to watch an entire town basically get wiped off the map was just, and to see it 3 miles away from my home was shocking. Yeah, it was intense, but no, we were fortunate to be just far enough south that we were not affected.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely devastating, obviously. And yeah, we were just watching. It was so surreal because, I mean, we just got off a plane and all of a sudden we heard the headlines and we're like, what? That can't be right. Yeah. In December, where there ever really is a fire, I guess. And all the craziness. So it's kind of surreal being back there for me last week because it was literally a year since then and all that. Well, I'm glad to hear that you weren't affected. But yeah, so do you want to give folks give us a version of like what you're doing now? Because I don't want to misrepresent. I know you have a number of things going, and this will maybe be a nice segue into one of the reasons I want to get you on, because you're a legit hardcore like cycling media dude, and we've seen a lot of chaos in cycling media. I've seen it, you've seen it, we've all seen it, and maybe we could just start there. But can you just give folks an overview, like what are all the things you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I'm a little all over the place because I was actually at the tour this year, and somebody said to me in the press room, he said, "Man, I can't open a web page without seeing your name on it." So I'm kind of everywhere. I'm insidious, I get into everything. But I've been freelancing, and so you'll find my work in Ruler magazine and Road Bike Action and all sorts of. Basically, you open a title, I'm probably in it, but. When I left Velo News 2 years ago, I started a media company called Brown Tie Media, and I partnered with my partner Mark Still, and we have 3 titles at the moment, and there's 2 bicycle related titles and 1 whiskey related title.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that.
Yeah, which is a little off the beaten path, I think. But slowguyonthefastride.com is, or just sgfr.cc. That's the first title, and that was supposed to be just like a cheeky, funny newsletter, and it ended up sticking as the name. So I know it's a mouthful, but it's it describes me pretty well. So
I dig it.
Yeah. Slow guy in the fast ride. And,
be careful, Joe. This is one of those guys who says he's the slow guy.
Oh, I know.
That doesn't mean anything because he's from Colorado.
Yeah.
That means he's the fast guy on the slow ride.
That's
here.
right.
Yeah. Or the fast guy on the fast ride.
I'm just, it is because I live in Colorado. I'm the slow guy on every ride here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so slow guy on the fast ride. That became sort of a road gravel content, and it's storytelling. It's not just news reporting, but a lot of gear and tech because that was my beat at Velo News, and so I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing because I kind of have this ego about thinking I'm pretty good at it. So I kept doing that, and then it grew. I wanted to do a mountain bike related title. So we just launched this year a title called Dawn Patrol MTB. You can get that dawnpatrolmtb.com. And that's pretty nascent. We're still populating it with a lot of content, but I've got some great writers and we're doing some really cool stuff to sort of engage a lot of the mountain bikers who sort of have been left behind by titles in the last decade or so. So a lot of downcountry, a lot of trail, and beginner stuff as well, in trying to get people to understand how they can access this community that's a little bit intimidating. So that's the 2 bike ones, and then there's the whiskey title called The Practical Still. And that Mark and my partner Mark and I basically we like whiskey, so we like being on camera and on front of microphones. So we thought, well, let's jump into that too. So we do a whiskey live stream every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on YouTube. You can come drink with us, and we also do a podcast. We just had Jess Graber, who's the founder of Stranahan's and Tin Cup. He was just on, and just basically. We drink and have fun.
I tuned into a couple of the live streams and they were super fun. I was like in the middle of work, but I'm like, damn, like I want to call in sick right now.
Yeah.
You guys look like you were drinking some really nice stuff too.
We do. We treat ourselves well.
you call that the Friday sip, right? Is that
Friday
right?
Sips Live?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we figure, who's really working on a Friday afternoon? Not us.
It's a bunch of fake working. Now it's just fake working from home.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
That sounds cool. It sounds a great way to, slip into the weekend, if you will.
Yeah.
So, and that's really cool. Yeah. Sorry, Joe.
So I have a question about Mark.
Sure.
So you started with Mark he was part of the Weekly.
Yes.
Yeah. So like for a couple of months there, he was part of that, and then he disappeared. Yes. Right? Is that what he decided? He just wanted to do booze with you, and not talk about bikes.
No. Well, I mean, who wouldn't prefer booze? But no, it's we did the Weekly, which was a weekly live stream of bike news, and. We actually really enjoyed doing it. And Mark's been in the bike industry for a long time as well.
Okay.
But it was just a priority of resources. We were just, we had to go with what was working immediately. So I would love to get back to that. It was super fun.
Yeah.
And we basically turned my garage into a de facto studio. And so we can do the whiskey and the bike stuff, right there. But no, that was super fun. And Mark's really knowledgeable and has followed bikes for a long time. So, it's possible we'll get back to that at some point.
Yeah. So as someone who, we're doing this podcast and kind of learning as we go. And it was fun doing a little research on you because I realized that in November of 21, you did something called The Daily. and within 2 weeks it became the weekly, and you had a partner.
Yeah, we're going to the yearly next.
So that was just kind of a fun thing in the evolution of your, of your process and the things that you're doing, because this is, I think, kind of like us, we're of an age where this isn't native to us, like sure. we're not 18 years old or even 25-year-olds, we didn't necessarily grow up with all of this.
Right.
And where, it tends to come natural to some of these kids. For us, we're kind of poking around and trying to figure out which one, like, what is this? What are we doing with all of this?
Yeah.
And during the research, it was it was fun to see that, you don't have it all nailed down, right? That you're throwing a lot of darts and hoping that one of these really hits the, hits. And it's cool, it's cool because I think
that's largely been the evolution of media lately is sort of figuring out, people consume media now in different ways, and we're expected to meet them in all of those ways. And so, for me, when I was getting started with my own things, I said, okay, well, I can turn on a camera and talk at it. That's no big deal. But what I found was that, that takes a lot of energy and a lot of brain space. And so it became a matter of prioritizing what I could actually reasonably accomplish. And, first I started with the daily thinking, oh yeah, I'll just turn the camera on every morning. That's hard to do.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is.
So we really have had to figure out what we're good at, what we can do in a high volume and what we could do in high quality. And so, those things went away. That's not saying they won't come back, but we had to focus on actually building the structure of the business. And, that takes up a lot of time. And, I don't pretend to be a master businessman. I'm a writer, so a lot of that takes an immense amount of energy and time. So, but I realized early on that was what was going to separate me from anybody else who's just turning on a camera, like I said, and pointing it at themselves and then stumbling through something. I had to have a structure to all of this and make sure that, what I was doing was high quality content, not just filler. So that was part of the experimentation phase of the daily and then the weekly and then,
I mean, yeah, you got a wife and you have a daughter and you you have a life that has to work with all this other stuff that you're trying to do, and and it's, it's a difficult thing. You've got to learn how to edit and you've got to learn about equipment and gear and, it can be overwhelming, when you're doing all of this because this isn't what you thought it was going to be 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I graduated from college, I was supposed to become a famous novelist right away, just rest on my laurels for the rest of my life. And
it didn't happen to me either. Damn.
I know. I wrote 6 of the damn things and I'm still waiting.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
Oh my God, good for you, man.
They're not good. I mean, they're just,
good for you.
They exist.
But that's still a lot of people talk about, writing. You ever see Family Guy or Brian, he's supposed to be a novelist.
Working on his novel.
Stewie's always like, how's that novel coming along? I like having written, but not writing. You've heard that before.
Yes.
But no, 6, that's pretty cool, man. I'm pretty impressed. Sorry. So I have to ask though, what would you say, you got a few things going on, but what would you say is your main jam or where's most of your energy and like spirit, like what thrown into at the moment, even though of course you want those things to succeed in concert?
Well, in terms of the business end of what I'm doing, I guess, Slow Guy on the Fast Ride is up and running. It is the closest thing I have to something that's just done and working. Dawn Patrol MTB right now is the focus and trying to get that built and populated. But, with all that's been happening in the media world, and especially in the cycling media world and the outdoor media world, my focus has shifted a little bit. I want to build something that is very reminiscent of a traditional title in a way, in the way that you bring in talented writers to a central location where people can find them. And that structure has worked for a very long time, and suddenly we don't have that anymore. And people are turning to newsletters and things like that, which are great. But if the audience can't find them it's just a lot of wasted space and time. So one of the things I want to make sure Brown Tie Media does is create hubs for those writers. And so you probably saw the GoFundMe I started a few weeks ago. I think that we can get into that later, but that was sort of, for me, a little bit of a mind shift where I thought, okay, I've figured out how to build the basics, the bones of all these businesses. Now what I need to figure out is how to aggregate the voices and get people to get used to coming to these sites every day and knowing how to fund them. And that's been an incredible challenge for every media outlet.
Sustainability.
Yeah. So a lot of, unfortunately for me, my day job is writing, and I do that to pay the bills. But then, a lot of my energy right now is structural for the businesses. It's like figuring out all the moving parts, how the business is going to work, how it's going to sustain itself, how we're going to attract good writers, how we're going to pay the bills. It's not exactly fun work, but it's necessary. And I think it's work that a lot of people are not willing to do. So I'm willing to do it. And I shouldn't say I mean, Mark and I work on it together. There's a lot of people who are behind the scenes doing a lot of work right now for us and helping. So that's the main driver. I wouldn't call that my passion, but it is definitely taking up a lot of my time.
I have a ton of questions. It looks like Joe had a question, though.
No. I was just thinking it's very much like what I'm going through with the bicycle shop right now. That traditional bike shop model, the way that I grew up in the business is out the window.
Right.
A small bike shop. We're not going to do business like we did 25 years ago.
Right.
Do some tune-ups, sell some bikes, drink coffee in the winter, and do it again. Once the spring comes. Now we have to be event people or have travel, a coffee shop. It's you need multiple sources of revenue in order to do the thing that you love to do. And so the thing that you love to do is taking on a whole different look. Whether it is the coffee shop in there or the art store, there's a lot of different models that are working, but that little bike shop on the corner isn't. That traditional little bike shop, you're getting squeezed out. And the successful small bike shops, the ones that I see, have a huge social media presence. They're almost like a marketing company inside of a bike, or a bike shop with a marketing company attached to them, where they're selling t-shirts and merch and rides and lifestyle, and we're a bike shop as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think you hit something pretty key there, which was the multiple revenue streams, right? You have to have, and that's business, right? And I think a lot of people got into bike shops because they love bikes, not because they love business.
Yeah.
And I think the shops that are surviving are the ones that, like you said, have adapted and figured out ways to make it work, because we do love bikes, but we also realize that the model has changed. And I think, ultimately the media is the same way. I think, the pendulum has swung in a direction that did not benefit us for the last 20 some odd years. I do firmly believe that pendulum will swing back. I think people are now starting to crave brick and mortar again. It's coming back slowly, but it is coming back. We need community more than ever. And bikes in the US, with the proliferation of e-bikes and the popularity of them, all of a sudden people are looking for resources. So the brick and mortar can be that. But it is, like you said, it's a matter of adapting and having those multiple revenue streams to support yourself so that you can get through these times where the pendulum swings against you,
Yeah. And I know we're leaning hard into old school bike shop, right? Our traditional things that we did in bike shops growing up, building wheels, building that custom bike,
right.
Talking to people and selling the lifestyle. And we have to lean really, really hard into that because we're not selling the kind of stuff that, we can't sell the volume, as a small shop that you need to stay alive and pay 8 people or, 10 people, that's not that kind of shop is, it's really difficult. So,
I think the parallels with media are,
they're very similar,
solid.
And then we have this overarching thing of bikes, right? It was never a money making business, right? There's not a lot of money in the bicycle business as a whole, whether it be media or bike shops or, you name it, it's still relatively small compared to dog food. or something like that. You know what I mean? Like when you compare it to other industries, we're you know, there's the pie isn't very big to begin with.
That's absolutely right.
It's rough, Joe. It's very rough.
Yeah.
Sorry. But no, that's actually, that's a great parallel. Maybe it's a good time to just throw a little high context here in terms of like what's been going on in the industry, based on you told us, you know, basically, you know, you're kind of a privateer almost, Dan, like out there in the media universe with your partner there, trying to make some good stuff happen. But I know you worked for all these. You still work for some titles, of course. And by the way, I saw you listened to some of your podcasts. I think I listened to all of them, but the ones on Rouleur, I think are really, really good.
Thanks.
That those have been really nice. And then I've seen the YouTube videos with the let me see that and some of the product reviews and yeah, you got a good thing going, man. But in terms of the bigger industry stuff, and I know you came from working at some of these titles. I've worked at a couple over the years, but you know, we've seen this like implosion, if that's the word, in cycling media. So to kind of state the obvious to people who are in the industry, but in case you're not, you know, lately there were a bunch of layoffs at these major cycling titles, including, correct me if I'm wrong, Cycling Tips, Velo News, was Pink Bike. Did they also have Outside owns Pink Bike, right?
They do own them. I don't know that anybody at Pink Bike.
Hopefully not. So Velo News, Cycling Tips. Am I missing others?
Peloton has largely gone away.
Well, Peloton, yeah, I wanted to get to that one. That one has a special dark place in my heart because I know the folks there and I've written for them and done work for them. But the more recent stuff, yeah. So, and you know, we're not talking about. I mean, these were great journalists, you know, some of the best in the business, really, who were let go. And so this was huge. And it took me a while to really like process it. Like I kind of saw it in the morning and then I have a non-cycling job. So I was kind of like, but then I went back to it. And anyway, so we've seen like some real big layoffs. And I think the gist was, I don't even know if I could bring myself to read the full press release or the stories about it, but basically, you know, we can't afford these people, I think was the gist, the industry, macro environment, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard a lot about this, of course, in lots of industries. That's been kind of crazy. What's crazy for me too, I'm trying to lay out the universe here, but you know, we also, as you mentioned, Peloton. So Peloton was like this decade-old print publication, which was, for my money, one of the best. They were kind of like a Rouleur, like competitor in a sense. You know, very high quality magazine, the physical product, but huge emphasis on photography, feature writing, interviews, things like that. And they had so many great contributors. And they were a real formidable force. They eventually landed like the official North American tour guide for the tour through ASO, which is no small potatoes. They, you know, Brad Rowe, who founded and runs that, who ran that with some other folks, like, you know, he had a real knack for like the business side of it and distribution, and they were all over like Barnes and Noble and like, you know, anyway. So I'm a fanboy, obviously. So I love them. I did work for them a couple of years doing their social media, and I contributed here and there and did some editing for them, but very, very small in the big scheme of things. But my point is, like, I was a real big fan of that title. So was it last year or 2 years ago? They announced Outside was buying it, and they were taking it on. And you know, I saw that, and I was kind of like, oh, I was of two minds, like, because like everyone, I want to be optimistic and be like, oh, like. They'll grow it, they'll make it even better, and they'll do other cool things. But you know, part of me, I actually do work in news media, and so I've seen a lot of consolidation, and I've seen that often it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out well for the budding brand or for the cool brands and all that kind of stuff. So where am I going? So then Peloton, they announced was folding, and it would just be like kind of like a digital thingy. Who knows? And it'll be kind of wrapped up into this other thingy, and who knows? And there's like a subscription, and you can kind of get some of this like Velo News, and you can get, I think the bottom line was they're going to smash like Peloton into Velo News. That was part of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they were like, oh, now we're buying Cycling Tips. And I don't know, as you know, there was, you know, a lot of consternation. There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of speculation of like what was going to be happening. with all these brands that we all love, like this is North American cycling media, and to some extent, making huge inroads into European cycling media, which is obviously the hotbed. All this has happened, and I don't know where we're at now. I don't know where things are going. I just know that a lot of people are pissed off, or just, it's just sad. And I don't know what like this new year is going to look like in terms of cycling media. Like these big journalists have been kind of let go. I don't know if they're going to stay in the industry. I don't know if you have any insight on that. I know you can't like predict the future. So it's easy to finger point and be like, bad outside, like bad, you did bad. Like that would be the quick knee jerk version of it. But obviously there are other things that are at play. I think part of me just still bitter because, on a simplistic level, they bought Peloton and killed it.
Yes.
And I'm like really pissed about that because I really like that magazine.
Yeah.
And part of me too understands, this macro environment we're in, and like, everything's expensive, and then we had COVID and all this kind of stuff. And advertising is like a huge component of it, and that's super difficult. And the whole pie isn't that big anyway for cycling, right? There's like the tour and ASO, and then there's like this, and there are a few like big things, and then there's like not a lot else. So anyway, I'll kind of put a pin in it there for a second. But what's kind of been your take, as like, insofar as you can talk about it, because I know you know a lot of these folks, but what's been kind of like your take? And do you agree with like where I was going with that, or do you kind of have like a different take on it? And I guess ultimately, like, how do you feel like things are what are things going to look like in the coming year?
Well, I think what's coming in the coming year is going to be very different than what happens in the next 5 years, because I think what we're in the middle of right now is a very painful correction. The knee-jerk reaction is, yes, to hate on outside for all these things that happen, but and there's plenty of blame to be placed on them, absolutely. But the reality is the money went away long before they showed up. And the consolidation, by the way, outside the magazine was actually purchased, and then the entire company was rebranded outside. So as a point of clarification, there were, the people from outside didn't come over and then ruin everything. Outside was bought by Robin Thurston, who it was Pocket Outdoor Media. He changed the name, he rebranded to Outside. So just as a point of clarification, and also as another point of clarification, the ire should never rest with the people who are writing the content or editing. I mean, they're victims here essentially.
Right.
And even the people who stayed, after the union busting, which we could talk about after after all the layoffs.
Part of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame any of those people for sticking around. I mean, I think if you've got a job and the paychecks are showing up in this industry and you're making a living as a writer, you're winning. So stay with it.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of people who truly do love these titles and poured their heart and souls into them. And so to let them go is incredibly difficult. So the consolidation and destruction to me was pretty predictable. That is not at all surprising to me. When Peloton got bought, the first thing I said was, "Oh, that's not going to last a year," and it didn't last a year. Because there was just too much redundancy. And so I think some of those titles were, this is conjecture, I think some of those titles were bought specifically to put them out of business, because then you're
kill the competition. Yeah.
But I also think that some of the people who were making decisions perhaps had ideas of ways to solve the hemorrhaging of money in media with other things, tech-related things like NFTs, and that did not work out. That the layout, the rollout of that was pretty brutal.
Frickin' NFTs.
Yeah. So I think there was a sense that, yeah, we can do this, we can save this, and it didn't work. And I think they've been too slow to pivot away and to be creative about how they can find solutions for that. And I think the victims ended up being the writers and the content producers, all of whom have poured their heart and soul into this stuff, and they're the first ones to get axed, which to me is completely backwards. So I think, it is easy, and I'm guilty of it, of just knee-jerk, bad outside. But yes, and they really have screwed things up royally. But I think market conditions before that really set us all up for failure. Titles were dying beforehand, and advertising dollars had dried up. Brands were actually investing in third-party PR instead of instead of media relationships. They were bringing content in-house under their own brands. That was another nail in the coffin. So basically what you had was a model that worked for 50, 60, 70 years and then stopped. And to pivot from that after all that time is these are big ships, and they turn slowly. And so that's kind of what happened in a general sense. Where are we going? So now we have all these talented people just sort of floating in the ether, right? And we have a very cynical readership who doesn't want to pay for anything, first of all, because everything's free on the internet. And they just don't believe that journalism is real. We're living the era of fake news. And so my messaging has largely been, listen, a lot of people like to say the media is bought and paid for. And my answer to that is yes, it has always been bought and paid for, but it used to be that it was bought and paid for by the reader. And so the media's
touche. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So our job was to tell the truth and deliver a product to the reader. The readership ceded that control by stopping subscriptions, by not supporting the titles. And so you give up the power for what product you're consuming. And everybody gets annoyed with brand partnerships and paid content. And it's like, well, they're keeping the lights on for you to consume this content for free. And look, I hate paywalls. I'm a writer who makes his living getting paid for words, and I hate paywalls. So clearly that model doesn't work. That doesn't mean people aren't willing to pay for content. It means that as a process, the paywall doesn't work. So now what we're seeing is all of these great writers out there, and they're looking at their tools about what they can do next. And one is to either find another title that's probably also hemorrhaging money, or start their own thing. And we've seen that Ben Delaney's got The Ride on YouTube, which is fantastic. Kaylee Fretz and Dave Rome started a new podcast immediately after they got let go. I've been working on my titles, and Spencer Powlison just started his own newsletter on the dirt side of things, which is great. But how do you make a living? And I think when it's decentralized like that, that takes a lot of power away from us as writers. And so my thinking is, what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to go independent, as we've seen, and then we're going to kind of congeal again and say, well, wait a minute, we're producing all the content. We are the experts. Why don't we have any of the power? Oh, because people don't know where we are, So I think another centralization is going to happen. And I think it's, I'm starting a media company. I have no intention of buying 25 titles and, starting a race and blah, blah, blah. I want to write good content, man. That's what I want to do. And so I think what the people who are currently cut loose are those people who are passionate about content and about journalism and about truth. So they're going to figure out what's next. And I think what's next is already happening. We're very much in the process of it. The fact that I can grab a microphone and start a podcast is incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. It may not immediately make money, but I have power. And that's more important, right? We're seeing, outside has all the money, but they don't have any power right now. I mean, they can't stop stepping on rakes. It's like they're shooting themselves in the foot every step you take. And that hurts us as an industry. But I think what's next is the people who readers have come to know and trust for a long time are going to basically start being very loud about, what we do and why we do it. And again, I can go back to the GoFundMe and what that kind of shows us about that. But I can get off the soapbox for a moment.
Yeah, no, there's so much to unpack here and so much to talk about. But just a couple of things off the top of my head as I was listening to, in terms of the union busting, because I remember some stuff in the media about Outside in particular. I think they released a statement, if I'm not mistaken, and I saw some people who I believe worked at Outside tweeting about it. What was kind of the upshot? They wanted to unionize, and they were kind of, squashed. Basically, was it as simple as that, or what was going on?
And again, this is for me secondhand information.
Sure.
I talked to people who were, who work at Outside, and I don't want to give their names or anything to get them in trouble, but I wasn't in the room. But my understanding is that when Outside was purchased, there was a pay grade discrepancy between the people who came over from Outside and the people who were already a part of the company. And there was some sort of argument over how that should work. And the outside folks wanted more say in what that would look like, and they were not getting it, I guess, and so they decided that they were going to unionize. When the management found out about that, they tried to talk people out of it, of course, because that's what management of any company would do, I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
And they were successful in doing so. So they voted against unionizing. And I think part of that was, there were actually public assurances that, oh, nobody's going to get laid off. There's not going to be,
retaliation.
But then of course there was immediately layoffs. So I don't know. I was not in the room, so I don't.
Yeah, no, I was just looking for the higher level kind of overview because I saw some of that, and I don't feel like I ever had the full kind of sense of what was happening, and how could you? I mean, a lot of it you'll never know about.
Right. Well, and take my assessment with a grain of salt too, because like I said, I'm only hearing this secondhand.
Sure.
That is my understanding from what I've heard and seen.
That is a great opportunity, by the way, if there was a good, well-funded news team to go in and find out what's going on. Because if you go
journalism,
my former employer, where I was for 8 years, Business Insider, that's kind of where they made their mark is going into companies, sleuthing on LinkedIn, finding people who work there or worked there, and asking them about all these things. And anyway. It's just kind of a meta thought. Like that would be a great opportunity for like a good cycling pub to be like, here's what's really happening with the union busing. Because we see that now with Starbucks. Starbucks is union busing apparently, and all kinds of other things. I'm floating around a little bit here, but this other thing I wanted to ask you, which I think is kind of related to our current topic, the kind of cycling media implosion, yet again, redux. But I wanted to ask, so when you decided to kind of do your own thing, and I know you still have your hands on a couple other publications, as it were, but you have like two or three things going. Were you at all? Did you give a lot of thought into just having one thing, like one site? Because you have Slow Guy and Fast Ride. You have the Dawn Patrol, which I think is a dope name, by the way. I just love that idea. I just think of like Rambo getting up. But like, did you give any thought? I mean, I'm sure you did, but like, what went through your mind when you were like, I'll keep these maybe entities separate, or bring them together? Because I know like I wasn't on the early end with Peloton, but when I did start at Peloton when they still had their mountain bike title. Whose name I'm just forgetting all of a sudden.
It was like
what was it called?
It was like Single Track or something.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
And then I saw that die, and that was sad. I guess I'm just wondering, like, can you talk a little bit about like, and I know I'm switching gears, but like, can you talk a little bit about your thought process with some of that?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a question I get quite a lot. And I think that the conventional thinking is put it all in one place, so anybody who's interested in bikes in general can find whatever they need. But to me, that's an overwhelming experience for people. And I think the entry points for cycling are fairly distinct at this point. A lot of people are coming to cycling either through e-bikes or through gravel. And mountain biking is its own intimidating thing. Road is its own intimidating thing. And I think if you start in one of those categories, you want information specific to that. And so, but if you do all of it, if you grow in the sport and you become like I ride all of it. I ride road, gravel, mountain bike. At that point, I'm crafty enough to find what information I want where I want it. That's the great thing about the internet, right? So to me, it made more sense to tailor content specifically to the subsets of cycling that made sense to me. Which Slow Guy and the Fast Ride was originally supposed to be Dawn Patrol Road. And then there was going to be Dawn Patrol Gravel, Dawn Patrol MTB. We're going to be hopefully launching Dawn Patrol Gravel next year. Everything was supposed to be Dawn Patrol. Slow Guy stuck. I think we can all relate to it. So we're sticking with Slow Guy and the Fast Ride for road and right now gravel content. But the idea was to make it an accessible experience for people. If I want to know what gravel tires to put on my gravel bike, I don't want to have to go through a website and sort through mountain bike stuff and road bike stuff. I just want to find gravel stuff. And I think that is a way of thinking that gets away from traditional media, because at one point you would have a print product and you would have to get all that stuff into one print product. We don't have to do that anymore. And Google doesn't work that way anymore. Google wants very focused topics. So in order to get found, you have to be an authority on a single topic. So to me, it made a lot of sense to delineate between the different categories. And I think people who are into more than one category are smart enough to find what they need and where they need it. And we can, of course, cross-link, and we can, if something is relevant to more than one category, then we have the power to put it on all the different sites. So to me, it just made sense as a user experience to separate these, and we'll continue to do that. They'll be done patrol gravel, like I said. We have long-term plans for an e-bike title. Those are, to me, very different consumers in general, and so you have to tailor that experience to those consumers. And then, like I said, to have the opportunity to not only be able to tailor that content to specific consumers, but also be able to cross-pollinate all the content if it's relevant to different sites, then all the better.
It makes a lot of sense to me, actually, what you said. I find it compelling. And I think the reality, at least for me, is I find I'm reading stuff via social, so much anyway. Like, I'll see something on Instagram, I'll click through, even Twitter a lot, because I happen to be on Twitter a lot, partly for work, but I've always been on Twitter, I guess. I'm no longer on Facebook, but yeah, just like I'm entering from social anyway. It's pretty rare when I actually I will go to Velo News and like cycling tips, like directly, because I have a bookmark, but I'm usually just finding stuff kind of randomly out there. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, news has generally been Twitterfied, right? Like we click on social media, and that's how we find our news. Mm-hmm. So to me, if you can capitalize on that, we have yet to figure out the social media algorithm magic voodoo that
it's
literally changing as Elon Musk sleeps tonight.
And with with all the turmoil at Twitter, like recently, I've been checking out some of these different social networks, right? Like the GCN app, for example. I started tinkering around on there. I didn't realize that they had something going on there, and it's very road centric, obviously, right. But they're very active. It's a pretty hardcore
loyalty is like super high.
It's a very hardcore group there, and there's a lot of interaction there. Kind of a friendly lot. You're speaking to the you're preaching to the choir there. Everybody is pretty receptive to your message, and it's interesting to see all these little subsets of social where these new groups. People have splintered off of Twitter into these different onto these different social networks now, right. And it's kind of exciting. Also daunting, because it's like, where do you go now? Like, do I have to set up another 8 accounts at different places?
Yeah. Well, I think too that really points to a reassessment of value for a lot of people. You think about it this way. In the past, even Velo News, who I worked for, any cycling publication that's been around for years and years and years has a big audience, right? Mm-hmm. And so brands would spend money with those titles because of the size of their audience, their reach, right? But on a practical level, these days, when you create content on the web, especially, you say, just for a scalable example, say media title X has 10,000 subscribers, listeners, viewers, whatever. Of those 10,000, maybe 6,000 are actually going to consume the product. Maybe 3,000 of those 6,000 are going to actually do a click through. Maybe 1,500 of those people are actually going to, engage with whatever content they click through to, and maybe like 50 might actually make a purchase. That's even probably a big number. So it's just diminishing returns. But with smaller engagement titles like what I'm doing and like what Ben Delaney's doing, the overall numbers are smaller, but the engagement is much higher. Yeah. These people are loyal to the names that they know. They're not loyal to the titles. They're loyal to the names that they've grown up with and trusted. So if I have 500 subscribers and 400 are engaged and 300 are taking an action and 200 are, whatever, you're spending less money for essentially the same result. So to me, it's fiscally more valuable. And they're repeat customers. They're usually people who have a lot of money to spend. To me, the value proposition is much better with a smaller group anyway.
The the riches are in the niches, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I mean, I assume that everybody just wants to come look at my beautiful face, but we've got to have some.
That's why you're here on our show, dude.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so much to talk about, but I didn't want to hog the mic. Joe, did you have a couple of things? Because otherwise, I have a list of things.
No. You know what? I like hearing you guys talk, because you're both in the business, and for me, starting this podcast was an opportunity to get back and get acquainted with the media again, because having been stuck in the running a bike shop for the last 14 years. I mean, when you're running a shop, the last thing you're doing is coming home and reading magazines and cruising the blogs and and forums and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But by kind of getting back into this, it's made me aware of more of the things that are going on these days. I think, and that's been fun. It's been interesting to be people like you and interact with you guys. More importantly, like really get it directly from you. And so for me, it's fun to hear you guys talk, because this is pretty high level stuff when it comes to the bike world, and it's just, it's kind of cool to be a part of it. So
we've had some heavy hitters on the show already, Dan is just another one. So we had Ultra Romance, who
nice.
I'm guessing you're familiar with. We had a two-parter with him, which was really interesting and fun. Yeah. And Kate Wagner,
nice.
She was on not super awesome. Long ago. Yeah. She's a spirited woman. Yeah. So no, it's been great. I guess one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is, without going into details necessarily, but so just for kind of like reference. So when I was, I guess, kind of getting my start in doing like anything cycling related with like writing or editing or what have you. So I was already working as an editor, but for like a magazine, but not a cycling magazine. And, I'd been bike racing since I was in my teens, and that's when I met Joe and all that kind of stuff. But I basically started this blog, and it was in New York City where I was living at the time, and it got some like decent readership pretty quickly. And I would eventually try to put up like a post a day or every other day. And I would try to, I was racing on the weekends in New York City. If people don't know, is actually a great spot for racing, which is something I never realized, but you can race a lot there. And basically I would just go home and write reports on my own race, my brave effort at a Cat 3 podium, that sort of thing. But then I'd like cover the elite race and then the women's race, and then maybe take some pictures and stuff. But like what I found very quickly, and this is just kind of like my experience, but like what I found quickly was like people were so hungry for that media. Like I couldn't believe like how much I was like checking my Google Analytics. I'm like, really? That many people like saw it? Because no one was like doing it. And this is obviously internet was well around, and I'm talking like, I'd have to think of the year I'm talking about. So 2009. So, and people obviously had cell phones and all this kind of stuff, but like, I just didn't see like social wasn't as mega as it is now. And now everyone has like beautiful 4K, 5K, whatever it is, like video and photos, and everyone's like an artist and creator. But at the time, like I was getting like really good readership. And then I would like, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try to get someone like a big name. So I had like Tom Danielson on for like an interview, and this was after a couple of his pops and some of that stuff. But like, and then I got like Ted King, and anyway, I just did these. Well, I found like the numbers were like really good. My whole point is just that was just me doing it on the side as like a passion project. Yeah. And it was very interesting. It was kind of like a real step into the media world, in that I had no ambitions to really make money from it. I just was like, if people read it, I'll find so much satisfaction. If I get a couple nice compliments, I'll be like, so happy for that. But eventually, I'm like, maybe I'll get an advertiser. So I teamed up with a couple dudes and like just a couple shops, and they, put like a static ad on my page, and it was real basic, super basic. But they cut me like a little check, and I was like, okay, cool. But I found like the point is people were so hungry for content where there was no content. Even if it wasn't even great content, people were just like, they love nothing more. People don't love anything more than seeing themselves in photos and like in the news or something. Like at least that was the case. Yeah. And so it was kind of interesting. I would just like email a shop or like some brands. I'm like, hey, I know you guys are big in New York City. Like I have a blog. I'm getting some good readership. Here's like a screenshot of my analytics, yada, yada. And they were like, yeah, we'll put an ad on there. We'll give you like $500. And I'm like, oh, cool. Great. Let me talk to my ad department. And I'm like putting on different hats. Hello. Yeah. Anyway, my whole point is just like, it was very interesting. And then I think that in part got me my job at Bicycling. So I worked at Bicycling Magazine for a couple of years. And I'm quite certain that that's what got me the job, just because I was like always trying to put up like the best work, like writing really good stories, editing really well, getting like good graphics, just all this kind of stuff. That was really interesting. And it makes, that's just a little background, because I'm wondering for you now, and this is like what a decade or two later, what is it like going out there? And you obviously have a much higher level production and everything, because you know you're making this your real deal. Mm-hmm. But what is it like these days? I can't imagine what it might be like if I were trying to redo what I did back then. What is it like to go out and try to get advertisers, to try to get some money in your pocket? Because like you, I also love to write. I love to edit. I love to produce content, to make content, to go to races, things of that nature. But as you alluded to earlier, like there's a whole reality to it. Like on a Monday morning, like how are you going to pay your bills? Like, can you just talk a little bit about that? What it's like to kind of go out there and like, and how's it going? Because I'm, you know, you'd have to be naive to think that it's easy or that it's not that challenging. But my hunch is it's actually really hard.
Yeah, and I think what's really happened for a lot of us in recent years is that, you know, like I said earlier, I'm a writer. You know, I'm not a sales guy. I'm not an ad person. You know, I'm a writer. And what I've had to do is reshift my focus and thought process and say, okay, I'm a writer, but also I need to sell this, and I need to step up because nobody's going to do it for me. So it is damn hard. Especially if you're small, because again, I think the conventional wisdom is bigger is better, and convincing brands right now to spend any money, period, is tough. And that's not a knock against them. I mean, I don't think they have a lot of them don't have a lot of money to spend. But we as media in the last, I would say, well, since I've been in this industry, have done a pretty poor job of explaining what it is that we do that's better than just the blogs and the fly-by-night content creators. What is it? Why should you trust your money with us? Why should you put your trust in us? And frankly, you're not buying my article, you're buying my life. You know, I trained for this. I worked for this. I go through a rigmarole every single time I post an article to make sure it's factually correct. If something is wrong, I have to issue an apology and there's egg on my face. That's what you're paying for. And I think right now, because this implosion has happened so quickly, we are still in a place where we need to tell a better story of what the value is of these smaller titles and these independent journalists. Why would you spend your money on this? Well, we could create the content in-house. Yeah. But nobody trusts that because it's coming from you. Let us do the story. Sometimes the truth will bite you, but more often than not, it's going to be of value for you. So right now, I mean, I've sold a few things. I've gotten a little bit of advertising. It's not enough to keep the lights on. It's just mostly, you know, enough to make it worthwhile to keep going. The Let Me See That videos that you mentioned earlier that I do, that's sort of, we've always sort of had a problem in media of separating church and state, right? The editorial and the advertorial. How do you know if something is real and authentic or if it's paid for? Well, the Let Me See That videos are an interesting one because the way I pitch that is the brand, the first video is the brand pays for that. And it's basically a walkthrough of a product. I don't editorialize. I don't give any feedback. I say, this is the product and this is the features. These are what it said, the brand says it'll do. That's what they pay for. And then I put it to my audience and I say, give this 50 thumbs up. If you get to 50, I will do a fully independent review. The brand does not pay for that part. So what they get is they get to tell their story, the brand. I get to engage my audience and say, tell me what to review. And then I get to editorially, independently review the product. And if that means that the brand doesn't work with me again because they got a bad review, well, that's fine. But, you know, I did my job and I spelled it out very clearly ahead of time that this is how it works. So I'm doing different approaches to what making money and engaging brands that way. I don't think anybody's ever going to buy a banner ad again. There's just no interest. So you have to diversify.
Clever. That's really creative. I like the way you did that. Like get the 50.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I think I do remember one of the videos mentioning that.
Yeah, and I spell it very clearly in the written contract that I give to the brand. I say you are paying for A, you are not entitled to B. I get to say whatever the hell I want for the editorial part, and most brands are cool with that. I think they recognize the value in that. So it's been working on a small scale. I think that's one idea of many. Right now, we haven't implemented more just because of bandwidth, but it's engaging in different ways like that cater not only to the advertisers, but also to the readers and making sure that the readers are getting the truth. That's important. That's most important, honestly.
Yeah. So, and you're still drawn very much to the written word, but are you, I sense you're pivoting towards video a little bit more just because is the engagement higher there, or is there?
No. Video is actually a loser in terms of money.
It is.
It takes a lot of time and effort to make videos. It's a lot of resources. It's an energy drain. It's hard to be on camera. Mm-hmm. I think I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not trained to be on camera. So again, you're paying for somebody, and it takes a lot of equipment. I've got lights, I've got cameras, I've got all this stuff. I've spent thousands of dollars on this stuff. Video is very hard to produce, and I think it's one of the most misunderstood products because I think a lot of people know they want it, they don't know why they want it, and they want it cheap, and they don't understand why it's expensive. And building any sort of money driver on YouTube, forget it. I mean, you have to be getting millions of views to be making money on YouTube. So it's a loser. So to me, video is a complement to what we do. It's important. And I think if brands want it, we have it. And if readers want it or viewers want it, we can do it. We can do everything that all these bigger brands can do, all these bigger titles. We can do the video, we can do the podcast, we can do photo. I'm a photographer. I can write, and the fact of the matter is if I've got some money, I can pay the pros who can do that stuff to do even better job, So video to me is actually a fiscal loser, but I enjoy doing it. I think it looks good on the site. I think it's just another way to reach people. And the more we can do that, the better. If we can meet people where they are, great. I'll make a video. We do it pretty well. But that goes through the same rigorous, standards that any of our journalism goes through.
I have to ask with a straight face, have you tried TikTok? Seriously.
You look like a good dancer, Dan.
Yeah. I've danced 3 times in my life. It was the night I met my wife, the night I married my wife, and I think there might have been one other time when I was drunk. No, TikTok, I signed up for TikTok, and then I immediately deleted it. And I realized that there's value in it. I am not the guy that can do that. So at some point, we will probably engage on TikTok or whatever social media comes along. I'm 40 years old, man. Nobody wants to see me jiggling on TikTok.
Yeah. I meant more like little product reviews or snippets or things like that. But maybe you could do both.
We've done some of that stuff on Instagram.
Just wondering if it's had any pickup or if you saw any engagement or traction. And because I certainly see like the big brands on there, and I'm constantly trying to like quiet them.
Yeah,
I can only see so many bibs in one day. But,
yeah.
I was just curious because I do see some of it getting a lot of play, but
it is. But you're at that point you're chasing a little bit, right?
Yeah,
because TikTok is where a lot of the younger generations get their news now. But for how long? I mean, before it was Instagram, and now Instagram's kind of passe. And remember Periscope and what was the other one? I forget the other.
Vine.
Yeah, all of those.
By the time we catch up to it, it's already old for the kids.
Exactly.
They're on the like the third thing.
Yeah, and again, it's what can I invest my time and energy in? And TikTok for me is just not it.
So do you have like for lack of a better word, a publishing schedule? Like, do you try to post like once a day? Do you try to do like a feature a week? Like, what's kind of like what's your MO right now?
Funny enough, I just had this conversation today because ideally we would be posting something every single day on all of our sites. I don't have the bandwidth for that. I'm sitting on a lot of content because I just don't have time to edit it and publish it. So I actually was just talking to a freelance editor today who's going to help pump out some of the content. I think a reasonable goal for now is at least one article a day on the sites. If we can get to that, then we can start to be more ambitious and see what we can get up. I don't foresee us ever getting to the point, like at Velo News, I think we would have something like 9 or 10 articles a day on the site. And, that was good for a news site, but honestly, that just pushes the content down too quickly. So I think 1 or 2 a day is more than enough, especially if it's good reporting and it's good storytelling.
And in terms of your, I guess, editorial vision or charge, what are you kind of interested in most? Like, are you doing, I poked around the site, are you doing more like, I assume not like quick news hits, because that's just like chasing your shadow, but like, are you doing more like more featurey stuff, like interviews or trend pieces, or what's kind of what's leading you? What's inspiring you for content on the site?
So we've got a lot going on. What I would like the site to be is not quite what it is right now. What we started with was gear and tech, like I said, because that was my expertise. But I wanted to do more storytelling. And so I've done some of that. I mean, there's a great video we did in an article about Eric Cedeno, the bicycle nomad. We went to Santa Monica. We did a really cool video of him. So that sort of personal profile type thing is really great. But what I started to learn was I can't do all of the things that I want to do. And so I've partnered with a few people. So Jonathan Kaplan is now writing a piece with some rider interviews. And I think he's on a every other week schedule right now.
Former colleague at Bicycling.
Yeah. And so
many moons ago.
Yeah. And he's great and he does good work. And so I figured, and he's been very helpful. So he's doing that. I've got, some other writers who are doing some more in-depth storytelling. And I want to get to a point where this is rolling enough that I can start doing features, because I really enjoy feature writing. But for now, I mean, we're just getting what we can get up that we think is useful. Dawn Patrol MTB has started a little bit differently. Again, we started with gear because it's accessible and I think it's important. But we also are building a beginner's hub, so that you can go to the site as a beginner and sort of get a sense of what I need, how do I get it, what's it like to take a lesson. So Melissa Rodenberg, who's a former editor at Women's Running, she's been writing this series called Notes from a Newbie, where she's taken mountain bike lessons at an all-women's group. She wrote a piece on mindfulness for mountain bikers. It's just sort of attacking these common barriers to entry. But that's not to say it's going to be just for beginners. I mean, there's gear and tech for all sorts of riders. There's going to be storytelling. There's going to be video. That's down the line as we have more resources and voices.
Do you look at analytics much, traffic? Like, I don't know if you use Google Analytics, if that's still around, or what, or Chartbeat. We use Chartbeat at like the big newsroom I worked in, but whatever it is, do you look at that stuff much? And if so, do you let it kind of like inform like where you're going to go? Like, I'm assuming you're not a slave to like, okay, this got the most hits, so I'll do that again. But like, do you like kind of have a negotiation in your mind, like how you're going to approach your future content based on some of that? Because if you had something that really, really popped, I imagine it's kind of like tempting to be like, maybe I could do another version of it.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to sacrifice your soul, right?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about being me is I work for myself, so I do whatever the hell I want.
All right. So what does Dan Cavallari do?
I do. Of course, I check analytics. That's a vital part of any business. We need to know what people want. We need to know what people are reading. And oftentimes what people say they want and what they actually read are two very different things.
Yes, I found that too.
Yeah. So analytics are super hugely helpful. And I've got plugins and everything that help me track what people are reading and when they're reading it. It's a lot. And I think, again, it comes down to bandwidth. What can I do to actually process that information? Well, it's maybe at some point in the near future, I'll have more brain space for that. But right now I try to look at, what I thought was a cool article versus what people thought was a cool article, and sort of, try to tailor the content toward that if I have specific goals I want to reach in a specific time frame. But for the most part, I'm more interested in finding new stories and new voices. I mean, this industry has been old white males for long enough, which is not to say that those voices aren't valuable. They are. We just need different ones now. So, funny enough, I did a podcast with Shayna Powless. She's a pro cyclist. She has the Dreamcatcher Foundation. She's been doing incredible work to bring awareness to Indigenous women who are basically literally just disappearing and facing all sorts of violence. And I thought that was the most compelling and possibly one of the more important podcasts I've ever done. And it got so few listens. I was so disappointed. So part of me is like, well, I don't want to give up on that content. I want to find a way to amplify that so people realize that it's important and that it's worth listening to. So that takes a little bit of guts, because you have to look away from the analytics and say, I still believe firmly that this is important.
Yeah.
So it's a balance, I would say. I mean, I don't want to be completely driven by analytics. That's no fun, first of all.
Yeah. It has to stay interesting to you, because at the end, what's going to sell is the authenticity, right? It's your it's your excitement for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I'm not engaged, then people are they're gonna sense that immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm familiar with her. She just so I'm clear, is she the sister of the World Tour rider?
Yeah, Nielsen Powless.
On EF.
Yeah.
Wow, what amazing family and talent there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I gotta have so many other questions. I think real quick before we miss our chance, though, we have to do the 9 questions. It's a little,
Danny's got a thing. Yeah,
it's a little feature we do here.
He's putting his glasses on.
Oh yeah, no, this is official. Be careful.
Bear with me while I find.
You're a guitar guy too, right, Dan?
I am. I got my fingers in everything.
Yeah, saw those hanging in the back of the garage there.
Yeah. I got some new guitars here and amps, and I just I can't sit still is really the problem.
Well, you're a bike shop guy, so gear is
oh
yeah. I've got the same
motorcycles,
problem. Yeah.
You name it, I get into it hard.
That's how I ended up with a bicycle shop. Eventually you have so much stuff. Your wife's like, well, get it out of the house.
Yeah, you already have a shop. Just sell the stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Someday I'll tell you about the time I almost bought a bike shop.
Well,
I was narrowly saved.
Really?
Yeah. Narrowly escaped it.
We'll have you on for another one. We'll talk. We'll go in a little more in depth about your bike shop career.
Yeah, it's colorful.
So, 9 questions for Dan Cavallari. What was your first bike?
Ooh, man, first one. I don't even know the brand, honestly, but I can remember. I can picture it. It was like a 20-inch blue BMX bike. But I can't remember the name. I had it for a long time.
Did it have a number plate? Racing number plate or mag wheels or pegs or anything like that?
It did. It had a number plate. I don't remember what number was on it. And it had plastic wheels, which in retrospect is horrifying.
Did the job. It got you started.
Yeah, they're round. They roll.
Yeah.
I thought number plates on bikes when I was a kid were just the coolest thing. I thought it was like, that meant you were a racer, like you're a pro.
Well,
like literally, I thought you were unbelievable. Maybe I should have one on my bike.
You should.
What is your current bike? Although knowing you, I should probably put that in the plural. What are your current bikes?
It's going to be a long list. So my road bike is a Merlin extra light titanium with couplers, SS couplers. That actually you can see it. It featured heavily in my Tour de France coverage this year, so you can look at that on Slow Guy but Fast Ride.
I watched those in Denmark, right?
Yep, in Copenhagen. So that's my road bike. My mountain bike right now is an Alchemy Arctos. I also have an old Trek 400. It was an old steel commuter bike. It used to be a road bike, and I pillaged it. I traded it. I got it in a trade. I traded half a bottle of tequila for it. Hey. It's a great bike. I think those, and then I've got my wife's bike and my kids' bikes, but that's the only ones I have a gravel bike. I have a Rebel Rover gravel bike.
Nice.
Yeah. So those are my current crop.
What do you ride the most?
This year was probably the Rover. I did a lot of gravel. I spent a lot of days riding the Alchemy at Winter Park. So I did a lot of lift service mountain biking this year, which was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're a better man than me. I think I might know the answer here, but what is your favorite beverage?
Oh man, I like bourbon.
All right. So the quick follow-up is, which bourbon?
My absolute favorite is called Booker's. And Booker's used to be very easily attainable, and I would buy it a lot. And now it's very expensive.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's harder to get, but it's so delicious.
Where is it made?
Booker's is a Jim Beam product, so it's Kentucky.
Okay.
And it is delicious. And if any of your listeners want to send me bottles of it, I will happily be on the receiving end.
Y'all heard.
Yeah.
What would a bottle go for in the store, or can you not buy it in the store?
You can still see it occasionally. It's around $100 now per bottle.
Okay. Do you like it neat or on the rocks or what?
I'm a neat guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
High octane.
There you go. Isn't there a thing where you're supposed to put like a little bit of a rock to open it, or is that BS?
You can, and you could just put a drop of water in it, and it'll totally, very often change the characteristics of the whiskey. It's really cool.
Is that the kind of stuff you go into on the practical still?
We do indeed, yeah, yeah. And the practical still is all about finding good whiskey at not a lot of money. Inexpensive that's still really good. So the practical end of it,
No, I think that's a good thing to know. Just like knowing a little bit about wine, and I mean, you never know what crew you're in. What group you're going to find yourself in.
That's right.
It's good to know the basics about anything, really.
Yep. I do all the hard drinking for you guys, so that I can share my knowledge.
Right, Friday afternoons, right?
That's right.
I have to ask, what is maybe the most overrated bourbon or whiskey?
Pappy Van Winkle.
Happy Van Winkle?
Pappy.
Oh, Pappy Van Winkle. That's kind of a popular one, and you think it's not so great?
No, it's not that it's not. It's very good, actually. But if you ever find yourself paying $1,500 a bottle of whiskey, you need to check yourself. It's just gotten silly how rare it's become and how sought after. I've had it. I've had the Pappy 15, and it's delicious. I would never, ever pay what people are asking for it.
That's a couple of bikes, depending.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. The last great book you read, Dan?
Ooh, last great book. So that's different from the last book I read. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I got to look at my list of books that I read this year. I read. I've been like on a horror kick this year, but I really enjoyed. You know what it is? I know exactly what it is. I read a book called Midnight in Chernobyl. Yeah, which is like a minute by minute kind of account of the Chernobyl disaster. It is fascinating.
An oddly timely book as well, huh?
Yeah, it's really cool. Midnight in Chernobyl was probably one of the best that I read this year. And then I read another one called My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, which is by Frederick Backman, which is...
That sounds like a Smiths song title.
Doesn't it? Yeah, it's like an emo title. Yeah, it was really good.
Longer the better. That's cool. I'm going to check out that book. Thank you for that. If you could win one race, Dan, which would it be?
Ooh,
Race to the Fridge.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Tour of Flanders. I really, really love that race. It's got a special place in my heart. And I've ridden the Flanders cobbles and the Roubaix cobbles, and I know that the Roubaix cobbles are just mean, whereas Flanders cobbles are a little more friendly.
Have you also seen the race in person besides riding that?
I have, and actually, I was in the velodrome for one of the coolest finishes of Paris-Roubaix. I was at the finish line when Matt Heyman won in 2016. Just picked Tom Boonen. I was standing at the finish line. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, those big races are exciting, regardless of the finish. To be there at that one, it was pretty special.
Life changing. Yeah, wow. It was mind blowing.
Wow.
Hugely jealous. An album you will always listen to?
Oh man, probably. Well, God, there's so many. Tool, Enema, absolutely. But I also love Led Zeppelin. I also love classical music, so I would probably I actually probably listen to classical more than I listen to any other type of music. But yeah, probably Tools, Enema, Led Zeppelin 4, of course.
Comes down to making out. Whenever possible, put on side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4.
And just because you mentioned classical, what's your jam in classical?
Lately Chopin. I really like Chopin these days. But there's a composer, or excuse me, a pianist. Her name is, I don't know, slaughter her name, and I apologize. Yuja Wang. She's just incredible. I'll listen to anything she plays. You Google her. It's Yuja. It's her first name, and Wang, Wang. Just watching her play is incredible. Anything that comes out of her I will listen to that all day.
Nice. By the way, did you see Tar?
No, I've heard about it.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah, all right.
If you see it in the theater, I highly recommend.
I'll check it out.
Oh, it's so good. Kate Blanchett.
I know people keep recommending it.
Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but somewhat disturbing, but hugely compelling, and what an amazing movie.
Yeah,
maybe her best movie of all time. I'm not sure. Somewhere you've always wanted to visit but haven't.
Vietnam. Yeah, I don't know. I think I used to teach a Vietnam literature class when I was teaching high school, and I just found it really fascinating. I'd love to go visit, just see the place. And I say that too because I also really enjoy World War II history, but I did get to go to Normandy, so that was another one that I would have mentioned, but I've already been there.
Vietnam literature? You were
Yep.
teaching that? Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely a little off the beaten path.
Yeah,
it was really,
no kidding.
it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Two more. If you could go back in time, when and where would you go?
That's a hard one.
Oh, we have all the hard questions here.
Mhm.
This is real journalism.
This one made me squirm. Like,
Yeah.
I saw you kind of moving your chair.
To rearrange
man.
himself.
Where's my
Yeah.
whiskey?
yeah.
Where's my Booker's?
Yeah, right. I can't reach it. Where would I go? I think I would really. I grew up playing baseball. I love baseball. I would love to go back in time to watch Joe DiMaggio play. And my grandfather was a huge Joe DiMaggio fan, and he always talked about how graceful he was in the outfield.
Wow.
I would love to see that.
Nice Italian boy.
Yeah, that's right. We all got the scattering of vowels in our last name.
Yeah. Classic
Yeah.
American, thing to want to
Vintage.
experience,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
Vintage retro.
Favorite rider of all time?
Favorite rider?
Bike
Of all
rider.
time.
Or could be a rider of other things, elephants or Pee Wee Herman. It could
Yeah.
be unicycle, whatever your
Oh,
jam
man.
is.
Can I say Dennis Christopher from Breaking
yes.
Away?
Yeah.
He did his own
Breaking
stunts,
Away.
I presume.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. I got the opportunity to meet him at Interbike one year. I love that movie, and you know what I love even more about that movie is that my daughter loves it, and she
Oh,
Really?
hardly she's 8 years old. She's been watching it for the last 5 years on repeat.
Wow.
That's very, very cool. Quick footnote. So just because the world is so small. So Joe and I, when we met and we kind of started riding, and he was kind of showing me the ropes. Road cycling is all about this cool exotic sport. We would go riding from our suburb of Chicago, which is like a southwest burb, to a farther away southwest burb called Lamont.
Mhm.
And that is where Christian Vandevelde is from.
Oh, no kidding.
And was born and raised and lived there well into his adult years until he moved down to wherever he moved down to. But we were out riding, and I think Joe already knew him, but we were on the road like riding with him, and like Joe was telling me later like who he was. And on one of the rides, we went back to his house. He invited us back to his house, and then we see like all these like trophies and all these like this crazy like collection of like cycling memorabilia, and I was like blown away. And I learned that Christian's dad was in Breaking Away.
Oh, no way.
He's one of the evil Italians.
No
Yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
He-
I'll be an evil Italian.
And,
Team Cinzano.
and
Yeah,
Eddie Van Geis as well. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was kind of a famous announcer back in the day when there was a Super Week series here in the Midwest, and he used to announce a lot of the bicycle races in America, and he was one of those Italians as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's a career high watermark right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe Breaking Away won the 1981 Oscar for Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
a legit
Great
movie unto itself. A final bonus question that I just made up. Have you spent any time on the ground in Spain, Dan?
Yes, I have been to Spain several times.
Okay, because Joe is a Spain. What's the word for? There's Francophile. What do you say?
Spainophile?
Spainophile. Joe
Yeah.
is a Spainophile, and
Okay.
Joe's better half is from Spain.
Okay.
And Joe has grand visions to do things in Spain. Maybe you could tell us where you were.
Well, she's from. Well, I lived in Segovia, so
Okay.
hometown to Tour de France champion Pedro Delgado. So the
Mhm.
guy won the Tour de France in 1988. But my wife is from a town called Alicante, which I'm sure
Oh,
you're
yeah.
familiar with. Because
I've been to Alicante.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Calpe,
Yep.
Valencia region there, where all
Mhm.
the pro teams do their preseason camps. It's
Yeah.
the San Diego of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, you'll be there in December or January, and it's not unusual to like hear a very expensive wheel coming up behind you, and you turn around and there's a couple of Decunic guys or a Lotto guy just whizzing by,
Yes.
while you're walking down the street,
Yep. Calpe is definitely a hotbed for that. And I spent a few days there, and I witnessed something somewhat unusual in Calpe. When I got there, it was snowing.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's really unusual.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been to Calpe, I've been to Alicante. I've also been up in the Basque region, which is also just incredible. Some of my favorite wine in the world is from there. So
Just covering, were you covering races up there or just doing preseason riding or something?
I was actually covering some product launches. Down in Calpe, it was for Shimano, and then up in Basque Country, it was
Orbea, maybe.
Orbea. That's right. Yes, Orbea launched a bike. That was really incredible. Yeah, just beautiful. And I've been to Girona as well, which is another hotbed for cycling.
When were you in Girona?
Oh boy, that would have been 2019. I want to say.
Wow.
It was before COVID. Yeah,
it's really exploded there. Everything. It seems like one out of every 5 businesses is cycling related in that town these days. Everything.
It is kind of a blissful place for us.
Yeah. I mean, between the road racing and triathletes, that the place is littered with
and coffee.
And a lot of coffee.
Incredible coffee.
Yeah. Well, maybe we got to get on the same page, Danny. What do you say?
Yes. I love Spain myself as well. Been a couple of times and always dying to go back. As we kind of wind down, I'm just curious. So maybe I should have asked you earlier, but so I mean, I've always heard, like, Colorado's maybe the epicenter for cycling in the U.S. If you get really into it. And so what's it like riding there? I mean, what are your regular rides and loops like? Because I follow you and like Ben Delaney and like a whole bunch of other people, and like, their rides, like I'm looking like Neil Bezdek, and who's someone I know pretty well, and we got to get him on the show. But I see their loops, and like, it's like all this elevation, and they post some photos, and it looks so dreamlike, and I'm like, like trapped in Chicago. But what's it? Just give us like your take, and it doesn't have to be specifically about the exact rides you do, but like just like the culture, for lack of a better word, and just like how do you view like the whole community there? What's it like? Because I think it's something that everyone always hears about, like Boulder. Yeah, what is it like?
It's kind of what you imagine it to be. It's the gravel riding is incredible. Just climbing out of the foothills into the mountains from Boulder is gorgeous. If you want to get an all-day road ride with some of the most spectacular views, I mean, it is. It just has everything. There's a reason American pros spend a lot of time in Boulder. I don't live in Boulder. I live about 25 minutes, half hour from Boulder. And so my rides are a little different. Where I live is a little more working class, and it's, suburban. So it's a little bit of junk miles before I get to the cool stuff. But then I get to Golden, Colorado, which, again, just you start climbing, and you can climb all day long if you want. And Golden's got fantastic mountain biking. It's difficult, it's chunky, it's rocky. It's just awesome. But it is crowded.
How often do you get to ride now that you have so many things going on? I mean, I think that's
so when I was working full time at Velo News, I was on a bike all the time. But now I think I've gotten the least amount of miles this year that I've ever gotten. And that's fine. I mean, I just refocused my energy to get these businesses started, but I definitely get to ride. I'll get to ride more next year for sure.
It's a great paradox, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
you have all the access to the best equipment, best bikes, best routes, and you're like, I got to work.
Welcome to my life. Right?
Yeah, I tell people, if you want to ride more, leave the bike industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty stellar here. I mean, there's definitely, and you know, depending on where you go in Colorado, the terrain can vary so drastically. We've got everything like desert riding on the western slope, to you know, pine forests here and snow and high alpine stuff up high. I mean, it's really diverse. It's quite beautiful. It's definitely worth a visit if you're not from here. And stop into basically any bike shop in Boulder, and they'll have the beta for you. So,
I got into I went to, is it Vecchio's or Vecchio's?
Vecchio's.
Yeah. I was there on a previous trip, and that was an amazing place. I could stand there a long time. But on this recent trip last week, I went to, is it University Bikes?
Yep, U-Bikes.
Oh my gosh. I just, you know, from the outside, it just looked like a nice big shop. Had a lot of like mid-range entry-level bikes out front, and, you know, it's universities, so I know it's near the university, and I'm like, oh, it's probably just a very functional, whatever kind of place, get a helmet, get a tune-up. And I'd never been in there, and I walked in there and I was like, OMG.
They have a veritable museum on their walls. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it's like the bike that Andy Hampson rode in the Giro stage win, you know, in the snow, like the actual bike.
Yep.
And then Davis Finney's bike and all these bikes. And wow, that was so cool. And it was so interesting. It's very similar in a sense to a shop that Joe and I worked at in Chicago that recently closed after nearly half a century, called Cycle Smithy. We talk a lot about it on the show here.
Yeah.
But that too had just bikes for everybody for sale. But then up on the rafters, or up on the wall up high, the owner, Mark, had all his like wild and crazy bikes, including like Olympic TT bikes and just penny farthings and unbelievable stuff. So that was really cool. I don't know, it just felt kind of neat. And I'm like, wow, this is a really like Boulder thing. I just walked in and there's like museum pieces right here.
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Old mountain bikes and
in the 80s, it was every Midwestern bike racer kid's dream to move to Boulder.
Yes.
And the kids whose parents could afford it would send their kid to college.
Boulder.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There was a handful of those guys that you would always make it over to go to school there. So
there's definitely a deep cycling culture there, and it's no matter how fast you are, go to Boulder. There's always somebody faster. It's really, you want to test your mettle. It's a good place to do it.
Yeah.
So,
I saw visions of American Flyers in my head.
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be there because that was such an impressionable movie.
Yeah.
And I know we're winding down, but last big question: do you want to? And this isn't fair, but do you want to just tell us a little bit about your experience going to the Tour de France this year?
Sure.
I know you went to the first few stages, the Denmark ones, but just kind of tell us, what it was all like for you. I know you posted some videos. I was always watching them once they were up.
Yeah.
It looked pretty interesting. Obviously, whenever the tour goes out of France, people are always kind of like, "Ooh, what's this going to be like?"
This is a story about a very fun week with a very dark ending.
I remember.
Yeah, so it was fantastic. Copenhagen, it was really just mind blowing to me. It's such a quiet city, and that's largely due to the fact that everybody rides bikes. The infrastructure is so good; you don't have to drive a car, so you don't get that car noise as much. It was just startlingly quiet and just beautiful. The infrastructure is incredible. The atmosphere for the tour this year was amazing. People were just so thrilled to be there again, to be watching in person. And I've covered the tour a lot. And the first time you go, it's a thrill because it's the tour. Then the next several years are kind of like, oh God, it's just 20-hour days and, just a lot of work.
The French.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in some small town in the middle of France with no internet.
Just give me my credential.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really, it was just so good to be back and to be in the press room again, but it was a quieter experience for sure. There were fewer journalists. There were more restrictions. It was definitely a different vibe. But I just had a wonderful, wonderful time in Copenhagen. And I didn't rent a car. And I covered the whole thing by bicycle, which was sort of my challenge to myself. So I did a whole series on that, which was a lot of fun. And what I learned was I didn't even have to bring my own bike. I did, but I didn't have to.
I remember you revealing that. You're kind of like, so I pretty much figured out one thing, and I was like, yeah interesting. Which speaks obviously to the country, and what they prioritize as a culture.
It's really quite incredible, and the way the infrastructure works, it makes it so easier, in fact, to just hop on a bike when you get in a car. So that was really thrilling, and I really enjoyed being back at the tour and seeing the riders again and seeing the race in person again. And Copenhagen, like I said, was sort of life-changing. The last day I was there was not so great. There was a mass shooting. I was just down the street. And so I caught it on video. And you won't see that video, I hope. But I ended up talking about it on the BBC World News, which was also a weird way to end up on the world news. But yeah, it was a little terrifying to be there, and it kind of didn't really sink in until I was on the flight home the next day. So I kind of had a hard time with that. And I got home. I got to my truck, which was parked in the train parking lot of the airport, and somebody had tried to steal it. So they had ripped out the ignition. I couldn't get home. It was just such a mess. Yeah. So yeah, it was a great trip with a dark ending. Yeah. But overall it was positive. I do think I came back from that trip with a lot to think about. Not only about the shooting, which was startling and awful in a lot of ways, but also just what I had seen about how life can be lived. And the fact of the matter is we can do that here in the U.S. We just choose not to.
Yep.
Which I find incredibly frustrating. So it was a pretty great experience.
Yeah.
You said you caught the shooting on video. You were just out there shooting some B-roll or something, and it just happened.
Yeah. So I was doing some gear reviews of some of the stuff that I had used for traveling around Copenhagen. And I was shooting some B-roll of a backpack that I was using, and there were gunshots, and they sounded like they were right outside my window. I mean, but I thought it's like it didn't click. I was like, oh well, I'm not in America, and this doesn't happen. So I didn't even stop filming, and then it happened again, and it felt even closer to the point where I winced and kind of ducked. So I caught all that on film, but it turned out it was a little bit further up the road. It was about a little less than a kilometer up the road, which was plenty close for me. I went outside and there was emergency vehicles going by and kind of shell-shocked people walking toward me. It was an ugly experience that I hope to never witness.
Yeah. So sorry you had to experience that. And
well, part of it, honestly, I'm glad I did. I'm not glad, but I'm glad that I have that perspective of somebody who has seen that, because it's horrifying and nobody should have to see that. And that made me more, I guess, vigilant against, the absolute chaos that we have here. So I don't know. It like I said, it gave me a lot to think about. And I think even months later, I'm still processing it.
Yeah. Wow, man. Heavy. I was just going to say one thing, and, I follow you on all the socials, and I saw your Instagram story. Like you showed the BBC screenshot. Yeah. At first I thought it was like what? I was literally like, what's this?
Yeah.
And then it sunk in after I put my thumb, you can hold this story. And I was like, then it sunk in. I was like, oh my God. Cause all the cycling sites, of course, mentioned the shooting too. Cause the tour was there and it was such a horrible end to the tour there and all that stuff. But I was literally kind of like, oh, it's and then I was like, oh, poor Dan. I'm like, Horrible.
weird.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a weird end.
And the other,
Yeah.
you know, as a journalist, though, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those things where you're just like, wow, you know, it's almost double-sided at that point, right?
Yeah.
Because as a journalist, you're like you're in the place where it's happening, and so if you
Yeah.
put that cap on, right? I mean, I think.
Well,
I
that's
think
that's kind of what happens,
Yeah.
right? You go into that mode where you're
Mhm.
like, okay, you know, I'm going to report on this, and I think
Yeah.
that makes it easy to block out a little bit. And
Mhm.
I didn't even think it when the BBC said, "Will you come on the show?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I will." You know, I didn't even think about it, and I
Mhm.
talked about it, and I, you know, gave my impression of it, and I didn't think about it until later. I was like, you know, should I have done that? You know, like, was that the right thing to do? But then I thought, well, that's kind of, I mean, I guess that's just where my head goes. You're in
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like I said, it wasn't until later I was on the plane where I kind of, it caught up to me, and I was like, oh, you know,
Yeah. What was I doing?
Yeah.
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 What just
Yeah.
happened, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
it was an interesting place to be, an interesting moment. But I'm, you know, I don't want to do that again.
No.
Yeah. So
No, you're not a
man.
war correspondent.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely
Yeah.
not. I'll stick to derailers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you just said that about your pickup too, because one thing I heard when I was in Boulder this week is the rash theft of catalytic converters. It's
Yeah.
like we've had it in Chicago. I think it's been everywhere, but in Boulder, everyone was talking about people stealing catalytic converters. They don't even want to park in a parking lot to see a movie because like they're going to
Yeah.
take my catalytic converter. Like it's crazy.
You know what the funny thing about my truck is? It's 20 years old. It would have taken them 5 minutes to take the catalytic converter, and they didn't take it. They smashed a window. They pulled out my ignition, and they left an old cup of coffee in there. And then they left. Yeah, at least
Oh
they,
my gosh.
you know, they made the effort.
Well, speaking of cups of coffee, Dan, if we keep you any longer, you're going to have a cup of coffee. So maybe
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to add or anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to get out there before we get to all your socials and contacts?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I have left to say really is that I started this GoFundMe with an insane goal of $500,000, and I did that for a reason, which was to show people what it would take to actually start a reliable, trusted news source versus what people are willing to spend on it. And so right now, of that $500,000, we've reached $2,745. You know, and that sounds like a disappointment, but it's not, because every one of those dollars is going to go toward a freelancer to write content. So I would hope that if your listeners are interested to go to the fundraiser and donate a few dollars.
How do they find it?
So it's gofundme.com/reshape-cycling-media.
Is there an easier way for them to find it? Like, could
I
they
can-
find it through your site or socials or?
Yeah, I'm pretty much constantly putting it out on my social media, Twitter, Slow Guy Fast Ride.
Okay, so you're Slow Guy Fast Ride on Twitter.
Yeah, and at Slow Guy on the Fast Ride on Instagram. You know, I'm constantly pounding it out there. You can subscribe to my newsletter, dancavallari.substack.com. That's another one that I've been pumping it out on. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't expect to get anywhere near $500,000, but I wanted people to know what it takes. But every dollar that gets donated is going to go toward paying good journalists, artists, and professionals in 2023.
Great stuff. And
Fantastic.
we know the website. Just tell us the URL again.
Sure. So it's well, I'll give you slowguyonthefastride.com. And of course, the GoFundMe is gofundme.com/reshape-cycling-media.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, dawnpatrolmtb.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us a couple hours.
Yeah, of
This
course.
has been so cool for me personally, just to catch up with you.
Yeah,
even though it's
nice to see you.
virtual. Sorry, I missed you in Colorado, but we will be there for Christmas.
Oh.
If you're around, maybe we can get together and try some of that Bookers.
I think that's a fine idea. Maybe you can come and do Friday Sips Live with us.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That would be very exciting, Danny.
I'll have to
I'd
get
love
my hair done.
Jared did.
It's been fun getting to know you, man.
Yeah, you as well, Joe.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
look forward to talking to you a little more often.
Yeah, and
man.
if you're ever in Chicago, obviously you need to come hang out, check out the shop, and we'll maybe do a little ride. But thanks again for coming on and telling us about everything you're doing. It sounds really exciting, and I think you're one of the good guys out there trying to do good things. So let's hope for better things in 23.
I appreciate that. Thanks,
Good luck,
guys.
man. Yeah,
Thank you.
take care.
Take it easy, guys.
Kid.
See ya.
Do.
That was good, man. No,
Dan's a great guy, isn't he?
You know what?
He's so cool.
As you can tell, I've been digging into Dan Cavallari the last few days, ever since we knew he was coming on, and I feel like I kind of know him a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's out there, man. The more I started digging and just like finding all the various things that he's doing at once, it's very impressive. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and so, credit to him, for what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Amen. Like he's kind of like that privateer, and the privateer is like that figure in cycling who doesn't have a team, and they still want to race, and they scrape together a couple of sponsors, and they get like a bike and some wheels and a kit, maybe like $500 to go across the country or something like that. And he's kind of like that for media for me. And he's out there and he puts out good content. I really like his stuff. But it's, as he was kind of saying too, I think like it's hard, man. It's hard to get the time to put out the content you want. It's hard to hire the support you need, and then just to get funding and kind of advertising and sponsorship. It's a tough go, but you know what? I think with Dan, I'm pretty optimistic because I feel like he's so passionate about it, and that gets thrown around a lot. That kind of passion project idea, but I think if there's anyone who's doing it, it's Dan, because like I see him all the time. As he said, you see him everywhere.
Yeah,
he's a genuine guy, and he wants to do good stuff. And he's super tech savvy. He's got great expertise, and he knows the layout. And he's kind of an interesting part of the world too, just to see all that. But then he gets around to, as we heard. And anyway, I just had a really good time talking to him.
Yeah, you know how I feel about my bike shop folk. I wish them all the best, and how difficult it is, and to get out of crawl out of a bike shop and go do things and do things for yourself, and try to make a go of this. It's a difficult thing in the bike world.
Yeah.
And kudos to him for trying and for going for it. So
yeah, it was cool to have him on. It was a new, unique, different voice. So it's kind of cool. It's just funny. Like I was just in Colorado. I was probably like 10 miles from him, but we'll be back there for Christmas. So
there you go. Maybe you guys set something up on a Friday, man. Go have a drink with him.
I'd love to go drink some bourbon with Dan. That would just feel amazing.
Some free bourbon.
Yes. Hopefully he doesn't charge me.
There you go. All right, man. Have a good night.
Thanks, Joe. We'll talk to you later.
See you, Danny.
Adios.
Bye.